I'm joined now in the studio by the lecturer in linguistics at University College Dublin, Fergal Murphy. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Now, the reason I asked you in is that people apparently are misusing literally all the time, and particularly apparently as the Sky soccer fella who prefixes every second word with literally, Jamie Redknapp, and then us people down in Cork, we say like after everything, which replaces, in my view, I think it's quite reasonable, it replaces a question mark.
Yeah.
So when somebody says like at the end of the sentence, you know it's a question. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I did look. The literally thing, of course, is quite straightforward. People now use it.
Please explain.
Well, they use it as an intensifier because before, when you had say a metaphor, you'd say something like the world is a village. Some metaphor like that, and then someone come along and say the world is literally a village, meaning that what is metaphorical or fanciful now is true, literally true. But of course people interpreted that as meaning it's very, very much like, or it's extremely like, or intensely like, so it becomes just an intensifier. So we don't have to go far now. I mean, just you mentioned football commentators, because our own Andy Townsend has a classic where he says the defender was literally up his backside. Now, which is fun.
But that means that he was actually inside his external orifice.
Well, hopefully not while they were playing football, because it would have been a penalty if he was dribbling outside the box.
But that's what literally means, isn't that right? Literally actually means truly.
Absolute. That's what. Well, now you got me there, because that's what it is in the dictionary, which you rely on. But the dictionary, remember, takes language out of its natural habitat, which is conversation. So when I'm talking to you, I use words in a way that gets across the meaning I want to get across to you as we're having the conversation. So for me in a conversation, and you use it yourself, you'll say literally, meaning just very much so. And in the case of the Andy Townsend thing, the unfortunate thing is he's got a metaphor of up his backside, and then he uses literally, which should mean that this is factually correct.
Yes, that's right.
That he's speaking literally, not metaphorically.
I am relying on the good Dr. Fraser Crane, who had this, funny enough, on his programme. And, of course, what Andy Townsend should have said, he was figuratively
exactly
up his external orifice.
That's what he would have, yeah. He would have been better.
So figuratively it's not real, but it's possible.
The word is figuratively a global.
All right, but what about the question of particularly Corkonians, but not only, like?
Yeah, well, and Dubliners have used it too. It's all, you can find it in various places all over Ireland.
Ross O'Carroll Kelly says "roish," after everything. So what is that? What causes that?
Well, again, it's in a conversational setting. It's the same as this thing, uptalk. I indicate to you that I'm having a conversation, that I'm asking you a question, or that it's your turn to speak, or I'm making sure that you're still listening to me. So the viewers now in the podcast will see that you're busily looking at the screen. Now in a conversation you wouldn't do that, but you can do that on the radio, because that's your job as a host, is to be doing 5 or 6 things while I talk. But in a conversation you'd have to look me straight in the face, and I'd have ways of making sure you're still attending to me. And one of those would be a raised eyebrow. Yeah, the eyebrow flash is a way of doing that, but also the like, or the is that so?
And so that's what it's doing, isn't it?
In the Cork like that you're talking about, because that'll be, where are you from, like? It's just punctuating, and it's just making sure that now I'm indicating to you that you can answer, and I'm also checking that you understood what I meant.
Are you worried about that is in regular conversation?
Absolutely not. Now, there's a few versions of like. So the like you talked about in Cork is different to the person, because he was like, and then I was like, so we were all like, which is a different thing. That's the quotative like, where you're saying he said, he was like, meaning he made this face. So that's the quotative like, which is different to the Cork like, which is straightforward, just discourse marker.
Like is really the verbal, in Cork, is the verbal equivalent of raising your eyebrow.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd agree with me.
And you raised your eyebrows, yeah? You didn't say like.
Now, a lot of people coming in here, for instance, Greg, with decimate. We use decimate like all the time. I would say on television, the Irish defence was decimated.
Right.
But in fact, decimated comes from the Roman legions, doesn't it?
Well, killing 1 in 10.
Yeah.
You decimated them. But that was a sign of a huge victory. When you decimated them, you killed 1 in 10.
So it would be okay to use decimate, really.
But words change. You see, that's the whole point. Words are not fixed in meaning. So words are changing all the time. So when we're sitting here in a radio station, we're broadcasting. But broadcasting is a term that existed before radios, before televisions and radios. But it was used then metaphorically. If you think of modern terminology with computers, virus, Windows, mouse, desktop, these are all words that were in existence before, but metaphor has used them into
but unlike English, don't the French have a committee to keep the language pure? Would you propose that we have an Irish committee with you as chairman, of course, to keep the language pure?
Well, the French committee does as well as its rugby team. So they ban these words that people continue to use, and you can. But if people have to ban something, it means it's in use. Like, you don't write laws saying don't do it. So they say you can't say le parking or le weekend. So it won't appear in official signs, but everyone will talk about le weekend and le parking in conversation, where language actually really exists. So the Académie Française can't control the language.
One of the ones which a listener, John of Waterford, raises is one certainly that's monstrously misused, is the idea of fulsome. Everybody talks about fulsome apologies, but they're not fulsome apologies. What are they?
Well,
what's fulsome?
Well, fulsome is a regular term. So you've got fulsome praise, that is, you're giving great praise or great laudatory plaudits to someone. Yeah. So but you can't give a fulsome apology, because you can't give. People take it to mean complete, and total, and heartfelt.
But it's not complete.
But it's not. Yeah.
And what is it?
Well, so if I give you fulsome praise, it should be that I'm giving you proper praise. But unless the Oxford English Dictionary presumably has a different definition.
All right. But you're not worried. But for instance, with me, I tend to say you know a lot, I think, on radio. So you probably listen, so you can probably come up with a few more. But isn't it a kind of a crutch that while you're thinking, by saying, well, now, Dr. Murphy of the linguistics department of UCD, or it's given me a chance to kind of get together.
It's no problem. But I wouldn't. You see, that's in a normal. Again, we have this. People complain about this, like the articles say about saying that the Prime Minister of English was using literally incorrectly, etc. This kind of thing. Language doesn't. It's not native to things like speeches and reports and literature. Language is something that people used in conversations. Literature and things and reporting came much later on. So language is not designed.
People talked before they wrote.
People talked before. Well, of course they talked before they wrote, but they also talked before they had television or recordings of any sort. So when people talked, see, if I give you a speech, you remember what I meant, not the actual words I said. But as soon as someone records it, you start looking at the words I actually use. So then the fact that you understood what I said goes out the window, because you start parsing and analysing the words. But that's not what language, that's not, our relationship with language as individuals isn't like that. We're not using language in any strict, careful way. We're making sure that we just communicate what we want to communicate to each other. So the and the are fine, because you're thinking, what's the best way I can say this to someone? Because saying things to someone, it's not that you say exactly what you mean. I mean, you have to find ways of saying things that the other person will understand you.
But, for instance, I would never end a sentence with a preposition if I was writing something. But I try not to end a sentence with a preposition when I'm speaking as well.
Yeah, but that's because you're too influenced by Winston Churchill or something.
Yeah, very influenced.
Up with which I will not put. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Thank you. Now, in Mandarin, this is good for you, but they add ma to indicate a question. So they have a sentence and then they add ma to it, and that makes it a question, apparently.
Could well be, because
in Mandarin.
Well, Chinese is what we call an isolating language. So, in fact, if you wanted to make a statement or a question, it would be a separate marker that you'd add. But it's the same as saying or nicht wahr, or that. So, I mean, tag questions, we use that a lot too. He went to the shops, didn't he? Or
so that's an interesting one, the German thing. Nicht wahr means what?
Well, isn't that so? Or
yeah. So the Germans added that in all the time. I mean, isn't nicht wahr the German equivalent, like, really, in a way? Almost?
Well, yeah, exactly. So all these discourse markers that exist in different languages, they're used all the time, and they're perfectly natural for people to use them. The trouble is, the discourse is usually around a conversation, not around a speech or something that's been recorded and analysed and parsed. So when we talk, we throw these things in all the time. We start a sentence, then we stop and we go on, and we start again with another sentence.
Dave in Dublin has the one. I've two I want you to answer for me. He's not unsure the difference between uninterested and disinterested.
Well, that's a classic example where the dictionary says one thing and the way people talk says another thing. But so we expect a referee to be disinterested in the game, but
in other words, he's neutral.
Neutral, but he certainly shouldn't be uninterested. He'd be a bad referee if he didn't care. So disinterested means you've no interest in which side wins. You're not going to gain anything.
But if I said now that the referee last Saturday was disinterested, I'd mean he didn't care. Well, but in actual fact, the meaning is the opposite.
Well, the thing is, how do you define the meaning? Is it what people think the word means and how they use the word, or is it what the Oxford English Dictionary says? Now, if it's what Oxford English Dictionary says, which I suspect is what you want the world to be like, then you'd have to say disinterested.
What do you mean by I suspect is what you want?
I suspect you're a pedant. You want people to talk the way you talk and not to have prepositions at the end of sentences.
All right.
But people do these days. They say, I'm disinterested in doing that, meaning I'm not interested in doing this, which is, according to the dictionary, wrong. But the dictionary also says that livid means grey. But people, you're grey in the face, you're flushed, you're livid. But people actually use it when someone is red with anger is what they mean. So the dictionary is wrong in that sense.
All right. That was a big ask. Upsets Louise from Cork.
Why? Why should it upset her? It's just it's a word. That was a big ask. But like someone else is going, they upped the price. I hate that. So people develop these passions about expressions people use, but life is too short to worry about.
All right, life is too short. My guest, Fergal Murphy of the Department of Linguistics at University College Dublin. So you can text all your linguistic pet hates to 53106 for the pleasure of 30 cents. And why do all these Irish radio presenters say in studio instead of in the studio? I have no idea. I tend to say in the studio, I think. And categorically denying something, what does that mean? What's that mean?
Well, again, we're using categorically there just as an intensifier to say I definitely deny. It's not what categorical would normally mean. But
what would categorical normally mean?
Well, that a categorical hearing would be you hear in terms of categories. I put these guys here together, they're in one category, those guys over there in that other category. But there's loads of words that people hardly know the meaning of, and they use in various different ways, and in conversation people don't worry about it.
Well, it just means that you can have fun with language and for conversation.